Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what is up? And welcome to the Steelers Burning Question. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis from Behind the Steel Curtain, and I'm glad to hang out with you once again as we get through another Saturday of social distancing. So I'm thrilled to talk about it. Talk about the Steelers, that is. And as I'm social distancing, I'm all ready to go. I've got my Tootsie Pop. I've got my Olive Garden mint that I kifed from my last visit there. So I'm all ready to go. I have all the time in the world to talk Pittsburgh Steelers football. Now, first, before I do that, let me go ahead and mention my other good friends here at Behind the Steel Curtain. Since I don't have any, I'm going to mention my colleagues. Haha, just kidding. I love all these guys. So a special shout out to my other social distancing friends at BTSC. Dave Schofield, Rich Schofield, the Sco Bros, the Stat Geeks, as always. Excuse me. I was also going to mention the deputy editor, Dave Schofield. Got to mention on the left coast, Sir Lancelot Williams out there, always pimping me as who's bad, and I appreciate that. Thanks so much. We have others to go ahead and mention. My good friend Tony Defio, and as always, my muse, the guy that makes me what I am at podcasting, Sir Jefferson Hartman, the editor-in-chief here at Behind the Steel Curtain. So let's all answer that question, who's bad, together, and we'll all be bad, and we'll all talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and a busy free agency week. So here's the deal. Going into this for the last, I don't know how long, all we talked about was Steelers are cash strapped. With what money? How are they going to do it? Anytime we brought up somebody, what we did was say, well, we can't even consider that guy because Steelers don't have any money. Can't kick the can down the road. Well, finally, the CBA gets approved. You get to kick that can down the road just a little bit more and keep it going. One of these days, that can is going to just fall apart. And hopefully you've got another plan in place down the road. But hey, I'm not going to listen to Fleetwood Mac right here. I'm going to stop thinking about tomorrow when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm thinking about 2020. And if you're thinking about 2020, you have to ask the burning question. After all these moves, are the Steelers legitimate Super Bowl contenders, legitimate AFC contenders, or were they just moves that just gets them a chance to maybe go 9-7 this year? So that's the question we've got to ask. And the first part of that question is, to answer that, you've got to think about the man that's in the picture all the way in the back. I don't know if you can't really see that. I can't zoom in, but that's my son, myself, and one Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger. And if you saw the picture, actually the videos of him asking us to be socially distanced yesterday, he looks like he has been socially distant for about 4 years. And it looks like he's been like Boxcar Willie, just riding the rails, eating beans out of a can. Just, town to town, up and down that highway or up and down that railway. But he's got a plan, and that's a whole part of his comeback. And from what I understand, and the big news from Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger this week is this is the first time in a long time that I have no pain in my arm, in my elbow. I mean, he looks like he is Rocky in Rocky 4. Like he's in Russia training for the new season. I mean, he's just going on the top of the mountain shouting, Baltimore, instead of Drago. Actually, one of my favorite movies. So, he's blasting the Robert Tepper. There's no easy way out. He's practicing. He's throwing not just tennis balls. He's throwing balls. He's probably getting ready. So it all hinges on him. So the moves that they made this week, do they make the offense better? Is another question that you've got to go ahead and ask. And when you ask that question, you got to think, what did they lack last year? And were the problems because he wasn't there with the offense. So one of the guys they lost this week that a lot of people were lamenting the loss, and I did too. I did not want to lose BJ Finney. I thought he was a very good player. But was he a part of the problem towards the end? If you could remember, I'm not sure what game it was when they didn't want him in there at all. There was another game against the New York Jets when they had a playoff bid on the line, and he ran over Mason Rudolph's leg, and Duck had to come back in, and Duck was doing absolutely nothing at that point, and that's when Maurkice Pouncey went out. So is he somebody that they were like, look, he's good, he's valuable, he's a good piece of the puzzle, but we don't have to pay him the money that he needs to stay? So is that a move? Is that a Lombardi move? Realizing that, okay, he has this ceiling and he's kind of at that ceiling, and maybe if we do wish him well in his future endeavors, let him take that big contract in the Pacific Northwest. That's going to be no big deal. So they made a move to help out in that aspect, and that was getting the Central Catholic boy, having him come home, Stefan Wisniewski. And the money that they paid for this guy, I mean, I might have been able to find under the couch cushions. Trust me, my couch is not that nice. But what I'm saying is they got him on the cheap. They got a player that has been an integral part of an offensive line for 2 of the last 3 Super Bowl winners. So Stefan Wisniewski's coming back home, got a very, very cheap deal. I mean, a little over $2 million for 2 years, not quite 3. It's something that you could go ahead and make him that top reserve on that line. He could even fill in for Ramon Foster, who they said goodbye to this week. He could even be a starter. So there's still a lot of things to figure out, on that offensive line, because we haven't seen yet whether somebody is going to pay the second-round tender for Matt Filer. But if you look at it right now, that offensive line is Filer back at right tackle, at right guard. Of course, you have David DeCastro. You have Maurkice Pouncey at center. We're going to have to pencil in Stefan Wisniewski right now, which when he got penciled in for the Kansas City Chiefs and their starter was healthy to come back, he didn't move from that spot. He played that well, so he was that valuable of a piece of that championship puzzle. And, of course, Big Al Villanueva. So does that line do better with Ben Roethlisberger calling the plays? And I got to think that possibly it does. And, yeah, we mentioned Wisniewski as a center, too. If something happens to Pouncey goes out, you move him over to center. So there are so many things you could possibly do. As far as on that line, you have a few guys that you could move around that can start, namely Filer, namely Wisniewski. You could move guys around if you have to. So that kind of, you don't sweat losing Finney as much as far as that move goes. And that was a big free agent move. They wanted to keep him, but not at that price. And that was a pretty good price that he got. So I'm very happy for BJ Finney to go ahead and get that money. Now my pants are rendered useless because they're former Steeler BJ Finney pants. And if you don't know that story, I'm sure a lot of people will talk about it on the live chat, how I own a pair of pants once worn by BJ Finney on the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's the move that we're talking about. Is that a move that helps them win? But that's only one of 4 moves so far. And there were more moves. If we talk about franchise tagging Bud Dupree, we could talk about a bunch of moves. But I'm talking about the guys that right now that they brought in, because a week ago, they did not seem like contenders. Now, I'm going to answer this part of the burning question. For me, I think they look a whole lot more like contenders, but you still have to consider what everybody else did, especially in the division and in the AFC. And we can talk about that in just a little bit. But as we go, I do want to tell you that please go ahead If you have questions, if you want to answer your questions, go ahead and put them in the live chat. Because of my adult ADHD, I'm going to probably not look too much at the questions right now, at the comments. So I'll go ahead and throw those. I'll go ahead, take a look at those in about 10, 15 minutes, and we'll talk about them as we go. Now, if we talk about a lot of the moves that the Steelers made and a lot of the needs that they had to fill, number one among them, I'm not going to say number one, but among them, a very pressing issue was tight end. Now, the question was, is Vance McDonald coming back? Do you want Vance McDonald to come back? So they decided that when they were able to restructure his contract, that they were going to bring him back. Ben Roethlisberger makes him better. He's not a great blocking tight end. He's a pretty good pass catching tight end. So they had an opportunity to go ahead and say, all right, we still have the Vanimal here. We have Vance McDonald. We can probably look for one in the draft. Maybe at number 2, you could get a Cole Kmet. You can get somebody like that. But as it went on, they had an opportunity to find a pretty decent player for only $6 million a year. And his name is Eric Ebron. Now, I'm going to be full disclosure here. I am fully accepting this deal, and I'm getting more excited about it as we talk about it. If we go back to the Steelers preview the other night, I said it was brought up. I believe either Dave or Jeff brought it up and said, now, there's still some money here. Do you look for a guy like Eric Ebron? My answer to that question was really no. And the reason I said no at the time was because I thought that they could probably look for some help elsewhere to fill in some spots where they need it. But looking at how there's not that much more time on Vance McDonald's contract, and looking at the fact that you're in a window where you need to win now, you could bring in a guy like Eric Ebron at that price, and that is another weapon for Ben Roethlisberger. Eric Ebron does better with good quarterbacks. If you look back, he was not horrible with Matt Stafford and the Detroit Lions. His stats are a lot better than you would possibly think, and it has been brought up on BTSC on our website. It has I've seen a little bit more that his stats have been a lot better than a lot of people have thought. Now, they weren't great last year, but he was working with Jacoby Brissett, Brian Hoyer. He was not working with Andrew Luck. When he had a full year of Andrew Luck 2 years ago, the man had 13 touchdowns, over 800 yards. He had a fantastic year. When you have a full training camp with Ben Roethlisberger, you have an opportunity to, have those guys gel. They're going to be very good together. And those are two weapons. So you have a weapon in McDonald. He's a weapon. And if he's let alone more, if you have two guys out there, two tight ends at the same time in McDonald and Ebron, you have a lot of balls that could be caught. And now I know somebody's going to mention you have a lot of balls that could be dropped. But that's just what you have there. You have weapons for Ben Roethlisberger. And the bottom line is to give him weapons. This also helps the situation when you have Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, you have James Washington as your 3 receivers. You're going to add somebody in the draft. Heck, you might add somebody else as a wide receiver this week. That could be a possibility. So you have guys that have to be paid attention to in the red zone, as it's being brought up right now on the live chat. And there's plenty of weapons, plenty of places where they could score. And you have another guy now who is a pretty decent pass catcher, who's going to be pretty decent in the red zone to help with play action. You have Derek Watt blocking. You have him able to roll out and catch the ball all alone. He's another weapon because he could find the end zone as well. You saw in the Super Bowl last year with Kyle Juszczyk. He's one of the best in the league at fullback for the 49ers. Not a lot of people put him on their daily fantasy for that day, but the ones who did won. And won because that guy found the end zone once. He almost found the end zone again. He racked up a lot of yards. He was a huge weapon for that team. And that is the 49ers are a run by committee team. And the Steelers might very well be a run by committee team this year. Depends on the health of James Conner. Depends, what you're going to do with Kareth White, with Benny Snell Jr., if Jalen Samuels even makes the team. But there are so many opportunities for the Steelers to score where they just didn't do that last year. And with that offense last year, they weren't scoring. The defense was scoring and helping them stay in games. So with that being said, you're adding these weapons, and I like the weapons that they've added so far. So if you look at Derek Watt coming in, PFF has him as the third best fullback in the league. That's a pretty good score. Rosie Nix, loved Rosie Nix. You weren't getting a lot out of Rosie Nix because he was hurt. He hampered the running game by being out. Ben Roethlisberger hampered the running game by being out. A lot of things hampered the running game. But if you have a healthy Watt, and here's the thing about healthy Watt, Dave Schofield mentions this all the time in the last week since he's been signed. The stat that he loves the most is that he's 64 for 64. 4 years, 64 games. That's playing 16 games a season. He's out there, and he is valuable. He's also a special teams demon. You lost Tyler Matakevich, who the Bills gave, a lot of money to, for someone that you could replace for less than $4 million. That's a pretty good contract too. So I'm loving the Derek Watt signing as well. If you check out behindthesteelcurtain.com, we started our grades. I'm the guy who does the grades after games. Now I'm doing the grades after the free agent signings and the acquisitions, because there was a trade in there as well, which we will talk about. So I asked for some help from my BTSC friends, and they're in there too with their comments on Derek Watt that debuted this morning. So check that out on behindthesteelcurtain.com. As always, we have the Super Chat feature, and the Super Chat feature allows you to go to the head of the class and ask your question. Jake Sanchez went ahead and put in $5. Really appreciate it. Like your logo too. That's pretty cool. Jake, so thanks for the $5. That goes into the Steeler tip jar as we help with programming, stuff for the show, giveaways. So thank you. Now that we've addressed our needs, which position do you think we'll look at first in the draft? So there's a position that you still have to look at here. And you just put a patch on a tire at edge rusher and outside linebacker. Because remember, you just gave a 1-year franchise tag to Bud Dupree. You didn't wrap up Bud Dupree. So that position's still in flux. So I'm thinking right now, you still need to get an edge rusher. You still need to bring somebody in case Bud goes next year. And I would fully expect Bud to be a 1-year rental this year. So I'm going to go ahead and say that you need an outside linebacker, an edge rusher, someone like that to come in. But there's other positions you could look at here. We can't put a pin in the offensive line. You signed somebody, but you signed a guy that's going to turn 31 tomorrow, or Wisniewski's birthday was either yesterday or in a couple days. He's about to turn 31. You can't really put a pin in that too. So you need to look for the future, towards the future, with offensive line as well. Do you look at a wide receiver? If you don't bring one in, this is a deep class. You can get a really good wide receiver in the second or third round. You can get a star receiver in the second round. At number 49, that's a possibility as well. If one of those guys drop, you might be looking there. What you're not looking at right now, you're not looking at tight end like you were possibly going to be looking at before. So I would probably say, if I'm going number one, I'm probably going edge rusher. I know they don't have a number one pick, but number one as far as priority. If I'm going number two, I'm still going offensive line or wide receiver. I'm going to go back and forth on that. But you could also look at the possibility if a quarterback drops, you could look at a quarterback. I saw a mock draft today that still has Jalen Hurts going to the Steelers at number 49. Now, that's a possibility. That'll make a lot of people happy. That'll make a lot of people angry because a lot of people don't want that. So you just have to decide what part of the window is open. So with the window being open right now for maybe 2 years to really go after that Super Bowl, you might be really looking at a wide receiver. You might be looking at a wide receiver to make things happen and go for the ring right now. One thing you can do, you can go the 1995 route too, and you can bring a guy like Jalen Hurts in, be your player for the future, and go the route they did with the second round pick in 1995, Cordell / Stewart, and get a player that is athletic enough to play wide receiver as well while he's sitting. So instead of just having a guy sit, you have him play, but he could also be your possible excuse me. He could possibly be your quarterback for the future too. So that's not the worst idea as well. So that's somewhere that you could look there too. As far as the other free agency pickups, we've talked about Watt, we've talked about Ebron, we've talked about Wisniewski. I'm on board with all of them. I think that makes your team better for right now. 5 years down the line, no. But for right now, yes. As far as replacing Javon Hargrave, look, there's no way you're going to keep Javon Hargrave. The best part about it is he doesn't leave the state, but he leaves the division, he leaves the conference, and you're going to possibly get a pretty nice conditional draft pick, maybe a third next year out of him. And like I said the other day, you don't make decisions now for those, conditional picks, but there's those compensation picks. But that's a little bit of a silver lining. But you have to put somebody in there, and you go ahead and get a guy like Chris Wormley for not this year, but a 5th round draft pick next year, and you get a 7th back. So you get a draft pick back, you lose a 5th, so it's the equivalent of maybe, let's split the difference and say equivalent of a 6th round pick that you lose. Get a guy like Wormley, who the Baltimore Ravens do not need. They brought in Michael Brockers. They brought in Calais Campbell. Here's a guy that is a lunch pail guy that's played well for them in more of a limited role, but he's a pretty good player to go ahead and fill in. And don't worry if you don't know who a guy is. A lot of people didn't know who Tyson Alualu was 3 or 4 years ago, and you don't really want to get rid of a guy like that because he's a player that he's a very valuable player on that defensive line for 2020 as well. So a guy like Chris Wormley, just because he's not a name, it's good to go ahead and fill him in. He's still working on his rookie deal as well. So, not a bad move there. The other move to talk about, one that we mentioned just a couple minutes ago, it was Alvin Bud Dupree. Here's the thing with Bud Dupree. If you're going for it right now, you pay the money, you get him in there like they did. You try to, if you feel that you want to get him for a new deal, you work on it. But you also know that you're working on TJ Watt as well. So that's a kind of guy that you might lose for good next time. But at least you get one more year out of him. And you get to continue the last 14 games of great defense out of this team. So I'm going to tell you right now that I was thrilled that they put the franchise tag on it. I wish they didn't wait forever and for it to be official, but it made a lot of sense. There's still that possibility that they trade Bud Dupree, but after tagging him, it was done with the Super Bowl champs last year with Frank Clark. They also did it with Dee Ford, going to the Super Bowl runner-up. That's been known to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's a possibility. So it's something that could happen. So what I'm going to do right now, I've kind of answered my Steelers burning question, and I'm going to open it up for you right now to go ahead and let us know what you think. Have the Steelers officially improved themselves? Are they contenders? Let us know. I'm going to start paying a little more attention to the live chat as well. But one of the things we're going to do here, if you're looking at the Steelers being contenders, you've got to ask yourselves, who else are contenders? Now, the New England Patriots are always going to be contenders because they're the New England Patriots. However, Tom Brady's not there, and he's a big part of that magic, and that's a team in transition. I would say that their stock is down. I'm never going, with Bill Belichick, I'm never going to count them out. I'm going to say their stock is down. If you look at that division, the New York Jets, I really don't think they've done anything. They really haven't done anything yet. Buffalo Bills are trying. They brought in Stephon Diggs in a trade. They're looking at. They brought in Josh Norman for the defense. They're really trying to seize that division, and they had a very good year last year. So stock up. Is their stock up enough? Are they that better than the Steelers at full strength? If the Steelers are indeed at full strength, I don't think so. The Miami Dolphins, they've got money. They were thought to have been bringing in Todd Gurley. He went to the Atlanta Falcons, which that's a hometown deal there. So I'm really not thinking really much of them as well right now either. So I'm saying probably the Bills are the team to beat, but they don't scare me for for the conference crown as much. They could, but they don't scare me as much. If you look at the Steelers division, the Bengals are trying. They brought in Trey Waynes. I don't really think that's the greatest deal. I mean, they're keeping AJ Green. I love the signing of Mackenzie Alexander for him. Very good player at corner. So they're really addressing things in their secondary. But I really, you just got to figure out what Joe Burrow is going to bring in the first year. Cleveland Browns, they've got a lot of money to spend. Jack Conklin, that's pretty nice. They brought in Andrew Billings. They brought in Kevin Johnson from the Bills. I don't think he's as great. They brought in my guy, Case Keenum. I'm still bummed about that one. But the Conklin deal, that's huge. They brought in Austin Hooper, so that's the prize tight end out there. But they're still the Browns. If any team scares me, it is the Baltimore Ravens. They had a great year last year. They faltered in the playoffs, but they had a great year. And now they bring in two studs on defense, Calais Campbell, Michael Brockers. They're not done. Pharaoh Cooper, they brought in an extra receiver. I don't know if that really scares you. Wrong team. I apologize. They did not bring him in, but they kept Matt Judon, and that's another thing. They franchise tag Matt Judon. So there's a guy too. That's going to be a scary defense. So you're looking at the Ravens. They're going to do something else too. They always do. So they actually scare me. But as Logan DiLorenzo says, they don't scare him. They can lock them out of the division with a healthy Ben coming back. So there you go. You look at the rest of the conference. Let's go ahead over to the South. The Tennessee Titans, they're bringing back Derrick Henry. They're bringing back Tannehill. I don't know. Is Tannehill a one-year wonder is my question. Is he really the answer? Did he just catch fire there? Is he a Matt Flynn where you gave him way too much money, and he's just going to be okay. They're bringing in Vic Beasley as well. Vic is a guy from that 2015 draft class that, maybe had a decent year last year, but I mean, wasn't really what you thought you were going to get when you were getting him. Ezra says Tannehill's garbage. I'm not going to go that far. I just don't think, teams that make a surge like Buffalo and Tennessee, that they, you really want to look at them in year 2 to see if they are actually for real. The other teams in that division, Jacksonville, I don't know what the hell those guys are doing. They brought in Joe Schobert, who I really like Joe Schobert, but the guys they're getting rid of, Jacksonville's, they're going to be competing for the number 1 draft pick. Jacksonville is not a good team right now. They're dismantling what was a great defense there. If you're looking at the other teams, the Indianapolis Colts, they brought in Phillip Rivers. Is Phillip Rivers, he wasn't enough for the Chargers with a pretty decent roster. Is he going to really be enough for Indianapolis? Indianapolis always has some money to spend. Big trade, bringing in DeForest Buckner. That's a stud on defense. He's an excellent player. I just don't know if Indy is really enough too. I mean, I don't think they've done enough. I think the class of that division right now still would probably be the Tennessee Titans, but you also have the Houston Texans, and the Houston Texans are a team right now that I don't know what they're doing either. I hated this trade. Oh my gosh, DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. Good gravy. What a terrible trade. I don't know what Bill O'Brien is doing there. He might be coaching for his life this year. A lot of people were joking that, well, hey, maybe you can get J.J. Watt for a 5th round pick and bring all the Watt brothers to have Watts happening in Pittsburgh. That's my new T-shirt idea, Watts happening. If we can get that, through, that'd be pretty awesome, if you ask me. So I don't know what the Texans are doing. I think Robert Doc Holliday Sadler just said he's losing his mind like Biden. There you go. Thaddeus Kennedy, great contributor to the show, says O'Brien and Hopkins had bad blood between them. I know a conversation when he said that I haven't had to have a conversation like this about a player seizing the locker room since I had to talk to Aaron Hernandez. That did not sit well. Did not sit well at all. So, excuse me. So, Houston, kind of a dumpster fire right now. So if you look at the rest of the conference, you have the AFC West. The Chargers, who's their quarterback going to be? I mean, yeah, I think they're going to draft one. Right now, they say they're going with Tyrod Taylor. Doesn't really strike the fear into anybody. They lost Melvin Gordon. They kept Austin Eckler. They brought in a good offensive tackle in Brian Bulaga. Hunter Henry's back, but just, they don't strike fear into me whatsoever. The Denver Broncos, they're in it to win it like Iserman, it looks like. But is it enough? I mean, you have Drew Lock. You're probably going to get a wide receiver in the draft. But you've lost some players as well. You're big. Bringing in Melvin Gordon is a pretty big deal. I have a friend who is a Denver Bronco fan who didn't love it. I thought their best move, fantastic move, was not AJ Bowie, but it was bringing Jarrell Casey on in a trade from the Tennessee Titans. I love Jarrell Casey. I think he's one of those guys who, like Calais Campbell from a few years ago, that you just don't think about of being a great player. He's kind of lost in Tennessee. He's a stud defensive lineman, really good player. So I love Jarrell Casey as well for Denver. Oakland's Oakland. They have the money to spend. They bring some guys in. They're kind of guys that, to quote Ben Affleck, you suspect. I think Oakland Raiders are like Goodwill Hunting and you suspect. Um, I don't think they're doing enough as well. I mean, they do have the coach there. If you believe in him, I mean, I don't. Oh, did I just call him Oakland? Yeah, because I'm looking in the O's. I'm scrolling, looking in the O's. They're Las Vegas now. That's going to take me a while. I'm still trying not to call them San Diego. But for the Raiders, their biggest, they brought in Corey Littleton, very solid inside linebacker. Kwiatkowski is another. So their running game is going to be their rush defense is going to be pretty good because you have two solid guys right in the middle. Kwiatkowski from the Bears. You also have Corey Littleton, so that defense is going to be better. A guy I love that they brought in was Carl Nassib. I'm a big fan of Carl Nassib out of Penn State. Saw him on Hard Knocks with the Browns, and then he was pretty solid last year for the Buccaneers as well, or the last 2 years. But Marcus Mariota was their big free agent signing. Does that strike fear in you? I don't really think so. But I'm looking right now, Denver being the class of that division. I missed a team. And who did I miss? I missed the Super Bowl champions. They don't have a lot of cap space. They placed the franchise tag on Chris Jones. They're bringing Damian Williams back. They really haven't brought anybody in. But they're still the Chiefs. They still have firepower. They're a dangerous team too. If I'm looking at a very early division winner, I'm looking at the Chiefs. I'm going to go ahead and right now, be mad at me all you want. I'm going to say the Ravens. I'm going to say the Bills. And I'll go ahead and say, let's say the Colts. And then wild card, we'll go with the Steelers. And someone crazy. Well, let's throw the Patriots in there. Patriots aren't, they're not that gone. Shanae Vet says AB will be a very cheap buy. Does somebody bring in AB? Really interesting. Somebody could bring in AB. Don't know who's going to do it, but it might be worth a flyer. You just don't know. You don't know how far how many games the NFL is going to take from him. But here's the thing. It all goes back to the burning question. Are the Steelers contenders right now? I think they're contenders. I really think they can. Baltimore is more suspect when they are not favorites. Last year they weren't favorites, and not suspect. They're more dangerous. So last year they weren't favorites, so you can go ahead and get them. I just got chastised by my good friend Knapp, saying with a healthy BR7 that they should be fine. But here's the deal. I am going to be cautiously optimistic. I think this is a good team. The Steelers are going to be a good team this year. They're going to be a contender. And the moves that they made are perfect for now. Remember that video that Ben Roethlisberger was in? I forget what the name of the local country band was, but I'm not looking for Mr. Right, looking for Mr. Right Now. The Steelers these guys could be a whole lot of Mr. Right Nows for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're good pieces of the puzzle. I love it. I thought they've done really well so far. They're not done. Something else is going to happen. There's a guy out there that if they still have money for, if you really want to bring in the kid from the Jets, 26-year-old wide receiver, you want to bring that guy in, that could be a possibility. So that's Robbie Anderson, if you don't know who I was saying here. But, you really have guys out there that could make a difference as well. It's that second wave. Remember, Tyson Alualu was a second wave guy. There's a lot of guys out there that could be very valuable for this team for right now. We're going to see what's going to happen with Hilton, if anybody tries to sign Hilton, or if he's definitely around. You're going to see what you're going to have with Filer as well. But with that being said, I'm going to answer the Steeler burning question. After these moves, the Steelers are contenders. They're contenders to lift the Lombardi. I don't think we're wrong. I think this is just a great piece of the puzzle. Lance Williams, so glad to see Sir Lance a lot. He loves the Wiz signing. He hates Watt. He doesn't hate Watt. But here's the thing that he said in one of our production chats is like, if the money was better for Watt, if it was less, he would like that a whole lot better. So, that's the thing. But, sometimes, I mean, if you're paying a little bit more to get a guy in here, there you go. The Bills paid a lot more for Matakevich. So he's cheaper if you're just replacing Matakevich. So he's actually filling two spots. So I kind of like the Watt pickup for that reason. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining me on the burning question. I think we answered the big question today. We answered a lot of other questions. We saw who's contenders in the conference. Yes, it's the Chiefs. Yes, it's the Ravens. Everybody else, I think the Steelers are right in there. I would put the Steelers at number 3 right now. And I'd rather be number 3 with the arrow pointing up. So that's not a bad spot to be in March. So remember, stay safe out there with your social distancing. Hey, let's get this over with so we could be partying on Heinz Field together. We could be partying for the draft. We could do so many things together. But let's just remember that even though your immunity, there's some. So Thaddeus Kennedy says that I'm going to bring this up. Thad, go ahead and hit me up on either St. Myron at gmail.com, or go ahead. You can hit me up at BTSC BAD. If you have a former Steeler who could come on the show, I would love it. We got to get us a former Steeler. I tried really hard. Tried really hard to get Ryan Switzer on the other day when he was sticking up for himself on Twitter. I tried. Wasn't able to get it done. But hey, I'll take any cool guests. That'll be great. So Thad, get a hold of me. In fact, I'll tell you here. Let me post this on here. Let's just try this. Thad8889 at gmail.com. You can get a hold of me there. Anybody who wants to get a hold of me, I answer my correspondences. I love to hear from you guys. But I'm not great at typing while I'm trying to do this. While I do that, I was mentioning social distancing. Make sure that we're safe out there. Has nothing to do with coronavirus, the Steelers, but I've got to bring this up. I'm a big pop culture guy. We lost a great one today. Rest in peace to my man Kenny Rogers, one of the greatest country singers, if not just singers of all time, great pop artist. We lost the Gambler at age 81. Rest in peace. Jeff Hardman hit me with the news this morning. My wife hit me with the news this morning, and I was absolutely crushed. So if you only know Kenny Rogers for Fried Chicken and the Seinfeld episode, he's so much more than that. Just one of the great ones. So rest in peace to Kenny. With that, be safe out there, my friends. Steeler family, BTSC family, I adore you. We can't do this without you. On a Saturday morning when we're stuck at home in March, I've got 50 of you in the live chat. We're going to have so many more throughout the week checking this out. We've just answered the burning question, but the burning question is, will you be with us next week? There's so many shows. Stick around with us. You'll have Lance and Jeff tomorrow. On Monday, you will have Tony and myself. You'll have the Sco Bros on Tuesday. You'll have Lance and Jeff again on Wednesday. You'll have the triumphant trio, Jeff, myself, and Dave on Thursday. And then it goes on from there. You'll have Lance with, I said it on Friday. And we'll have somebody else doing the burning question next week. But once again, I appreciate you for hanging out with me. letting some schlub talk about Steeler football, something he loves. It's obvious that you love it too. We'll love it together. Thank you so much. That's the burning question from behind the steel curtain. And to quote the great Rowdy Piper, just when you think you have all the answers, we start changing the questions. Good day.